am Jason Shim. This is lesson 7 of HSC Python. Today we'll be learning how to recycle code and how to use the associated data structures, functions, and modules. So before we get into this any further, I'd like to start with a small discussion on why we should reuse code. And the benefits are numerous. It makes code easier to read. This obviously makes debugging a lot easier, and it makes peer review not a game of, not a game of telephone. It makes your code a lot less convoluted, is what I'm trying to say. And this also in turn makes adding features easier, because if you want to add something, you're usually going to rely on existing programs, and you can just reuse those simply, and that makes that a lot easier. I'll go into this a bit more when we talk about functions. It also reduces the time put into a project, and time is something that really scales with the size of a project. When a project is massive, you just don't have the time to be copying and pasting stuff, when you could just make your life a lot easier by using functions. Smooth transition. What are functions? Let's start with that. Functions are, as the name implies, chunks of code with functions. And you often define them first, and then you call them many times later on, and that runs the code that you've defined as your function. And over here you can see an example of calling. You might not know what this means, but let's get into that. Function anatomy. So a function, when you define it, it's made of a name, a set of parameters. Usually you have more than one, and a body. So let's start with the definition. So we have def, name, open parentheses, parameters. Usually you have multiple parameters, and you separate them with commas and spaces. Close parentheses, and then a colon. The next line, which is indented, we have print. Well, so this is just a generic hello so-and-so parameter exercise. So print, let's just say we want to do that. Print hello %s, %, and then we have the parameters. And again, we're just going to have them in the exact same configuration as we did, with the question marks and the spaces. Sorry this is a bit dense. We'll get into this a bit more hands-on later, and by later I mean right after this. And this is just defining though. We also want to know, we also want to actually make use of this, which is where calling comes in. And it's a lot more simple. You might notice that in place of parameters I have arguments there, and the difference is just parameters are used when you define the thing and define the function, and arguments are what you use in place of the parameters that you want to replace the parameters when you end up calling that function. So a parameter would be int x, and an argument would be 3, for example. So I promised we'd go more hands-on, and more hands-on shall we go. You may have seen some functions before, including our range and list functions that we used before. Not revealed as functions, but they are indeed functions, if you remember those. That was last chapter, actually, chapter 6. But anyways, let's go into writing a function, and let's start with the very basic function that I have shown in the function anatomy slide, the print hello %s thing. So you can see the setup. We have def, let's call this name calling. Sorry. And I guess we have my name here. We have a colon, and that automatically indents us, which is cool. So I guess we want to print now. Hello, apostrophe s. And if you remember what this does, it just I believe it was lesson 4. We learned that it does substitution stuff. So I have this set up. Now if you see I run this, it does nothing. And we want it to do something. So let us name calling. And let's say my name is Jason, because it is. Now I run this. Hello, Jason. Marvelous, fantastic. And I should also demonstrate that we can have multiple parameters, and thus, so let's have my name and your name. Ooh. Hello. And wait, hold on. I don't want to overcomplicate this for you, so we'll just have this for now. My name. So I did mention that we are going to have to parenthesize this. So we have my name and your name. And just to demonstrate this for you, we don't have 2 arguments, as it says here. We don't have 2 arguments. We have 2 parameters, but we don't have the explicit defined number of arguments to fit that parameter number. So I don't know your name, and let's call you Shim, because why not? And ta-da! Hello, Jason Shim. Marvelous. And as you may see, these are separated by a comma. And we also do need parentheses. Wait, yeah, we do need these quotes here, because otherwise that doesn't track as a char, sorry. And we can also do this in a slightly different way. We don't have to have these defined right here. So let's say I want to make some other variables outside. So let's say first name is what I wanted. And again, I'll just use Jason Shim because I feel that out of sheer coincidence, anything else might be very creepy. So we have Jason Shim, first name, comma, last name. And hopefully, yeah, it does again show hello, Jason Shim. And so what do people actually use functions for? Well, it's often used to return a value. And hold on. Okay, sorry, I'm back. So what we were going to do is what were we? Yeah, sorry, we were talking about what we were going to do, what we usually do with functions. And I've commented all of this, sorry about that. And usually we use these to return values. And how do we do that, we might ask. And let me demonstrate. So let's just make a new function over here. Let's say we wanted to figure out our savings. And my parameters would be, I guess, lump sums, comma. Price, comma, and sorry, I am having trouble thinking of stuff to put. And I guess gift. Bear with me. And to return something quite intuitively, sorry, stumbled over my words, we just return it. So let's say we want to return lump sums plus gift money minus price. To see how much of your savings would be left after that. And we just print that. Savings. And sorry, we should plug in values. Let's just say my lump sums are $10, but the price also ends up being $10. And so a helpful little thing you can see is it does try to match up your arguments to the parameters for any absent-minded programmers who are staying up late in the night. Can relate. But yeah, now this should, it does indeed give 5. And that's pretty much all I have for functions. Now let's go on to a similarly important topic, and this would be scope. You might notice that when I did use variables, they were outside of the function, and I didn't reuse those variables. So if I scroll up here, if you look at lines 4 to 6, I didn't use my name or your name. Instead, I used first name and last name. And this is because something called scope. And just really briefly, scope defines where a variable can or can't be used. A variable inside a function body can't be reused when the function is running. And so that's why I didn't do that. So actually, we should probably demonstrate this. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. I will create a separate file. Let's call it scope.py. There we go. Def. I don't know. I'll just call this test for now, because we are testing scope out. And here I won't put any parameters in, just because. So let's say our first variable is, I don't know, 10. Second var, let's have that be, I don't know, 15. And let's just practice using returns. So return first var, and let's just do something we haven't done, like times second var. Obviously you could do this in your head, but we're just learning the concepts here. And so if I do print this, if I do print this, we actually do get 150, and that's using the variables declared within the function. However, if we try to print any of these variables, so let's say we want to print our first var, let's see how that would work out for us. No, it's not defined. It's counted as an undefined variable, even though we did define it here. And the reason for that is, I did explain this earlier. The reason for this is the scope, because it is within the function. I don't think any further explanation is needed. So let us move on to modules. Now, what is a module? And what makes it different from a function? Well, modules are, think of it as a step up from a function. A module is an imported group of functions, variables, and other objects. And they all essentially are grouped together to form more powerful programs. Some modules are built into Python. These are the ones that I'll be discussing here. And others, you can download them separately. You can even make some. But I feel like that's a bit advanced for today. So we'll just go into importing modules. And yeah, let's just dive into it. Modules. Let's say we wanted, I guess one interesting module we could go with is the time. And you can use this to do stuff like print out the time. So here is the module name. Then we put dot, and then ask time. I believe, yeah, this ask time is actually a function, and that function is within the module time, and so that's how modules work. I believe the time has indeed been printed. Very nice. And it does return it as a string. Let's try something different. Allow me to comment that out. Let's import something else. And usually you do import stuff at the very top of your code. Just a general note on convention. So let's say we go to sys, short for system. And you wanted to ask someone, you wanted input, and you wanted to ask them about say, a value that they want to enter. So we would do, after we import, print sys dot std in, and this is an object because it does contain other stuff within it, and this in turn provides a function, and that function is readLine. There we go. And so what this does is this reads a line of text typed into the keyboard until you press enter. I believe next chapter we'll actually look at how objects work. That's a tenet of object-oriented programming based on the name itself. And so let's try something with this. So let's say this doesn't actually do anything by itself, I believe. Yeah, it doesn't, unfortunately. So we'll have to do something with this. So if you remember chapter 5, I believe we used if statements, and if I believe one of them, yeah, I believe one example used was about a joke, and it would have to do with your age. So let's try to recreate that here. I have it pulled up here. So rather than creating the variable age and giving it to the if statement's value, we should probably expand upon this by asking them to enter the value instead. But obviously we have to create a function for that. Actually, yeah, let me get back to this. So def joke, and we want their age, I believe it was. So if age is greater or equal to 10, I think 10 was the arbitrary number, and age is less or equal to 13, colon, print. I don't have the copy pasta, unfortunately, so I guess joke 1. You know what? No, let's not. Your age is in between 10 and 13. How funny. And else, so in the event that you are either younger or older, print you are not in between 10 and 13. And obviously, I don't think, wait, yeah, hold on. So with this, let's try calling this. So we called it joke. So sorry, joke. Let's see, our age is 15. Yeah, there. Sorry, I did not see that. Now let's try it with 12. How funny. So we have that work, but now let's make it ask, right? This is no fun. So what we need is, let's try something completely different with the use of the module. With the module, this module. sys.stdin.readLine. I kind of feel bad. Oh, whatever. Def joke. And so here we would actually first ask them to enter the value. What is your age? I know some people wouldn't appreciate that. And an age would be, we would look for an integer. right? And yeah, there we go, without the print. And we are looking for an integer, right? However, when we input this in, essentially, it's just going to take what it gets when we press the enter key. And if it's an integer, it's not. Yeah, if it's an integer, it's going to move on. If it's not, it's just going to crash. So let's just have the same setup we did before. Let me just copy paste this. Else. Nice. Yeah. I believe this is right. Stray parenthesis. And I think we can just call this now. So, and notice we don't have any parameters here because we don't always need parameters. Usually they're useful, but in this case we actually do ask them. Right? Notice the difference between this and this. So let me run this. What is my age? Let's try 1. I am not in between 10 and 13. Let's try again. Let's say I am 10. How funny. Now let's try it without an integer, so 1.1. And yeah, that doesn't work. Let's try it with a word, like word. Yep, doesn't work. It has to be an integer. And that's how that works. So, with that, I actually believe we are done. Let's go through a review of what we did. So, here, we went over some basic functions. We went over, essentially, how we can, the difference between parameters and arguments. We went over how to create a function, the different components of a function, and calling a function, even with variables, right? Next we have a scope, and we just went over the very notion of scope, how variables work when they're depending on their location. And so that is an important concept. And now here we have modules. We looked at how to call modules. We didn't go over how to make modules. I promise that we may go over that in the future for interested students. But for now, we are content in importing modules and just knowing how to call them. Module name dot the object, usually sometimes in a function, and this does branch off sometimes, like we see here. And yeah, we made some rudimentary code. I will see you next time.